January 23, 2005, Johnny Carson stopped breathing. The man who spent 3 decades making America laugh every single weeknight vanished without warning. No funeral, no public memorial, no goodbye. His family cremated his body in private. They scattered his ashes in a location they never disclosed. The silence was absolute and deliberate, but there was one guest at this funeral that never happened. One name that haunted the emptiness more than any eulogy could. One relationship that turned his final chapter into something darker than retirement. Carson was 79 when emphysema finally won. His nephew announced a brief statement and no funeral. Friends who sat beside him on TV admitted they never truly knew him. He kept his life sealed off, public every night, private everywhere else. Presidents and hosts sent tributes, but his family refused any service, just ashes and silence, which creates an impossible question. How can a ghost guest exist at a funeral that never happened? The answer is simple and devastating. The guest was not a body in a room. The guest was a name that refused to die. The guest was a woman, Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers ground herself into dust for years before Carson noticed her talent. She bombed in clubs across the country. She got herself banned from venues for being too aggressive. She auditioned for The Tonight Show 7 times, 7 rejections. Each time she walked out of that studio thinking her career was over. Then came 1965. Something clicked. Her act finally matched the moment. Carson watched from backstage that night. When she finished, he walked out and said the sentence that changed everything. He told America she was going to be a star. That single moment created a bond between them. Not friendship, not family, but something professional that felt deeper than both. She became a regular fixture on the show. Over 100 appearances across 2 decades. He became her mentor in the only way he knew how. Through stage time, through validation, through the ultimate gift of being named guest host in 1983. She was the first woman to ever hold that position. She thought this meant something permanent. She thought it meant he saw her as an equal. She thought wrong. But here is the critical detail everyone misses when they tell this story. They were never friends. They never had dinner together. They never spoke on the phone about life or feelings or fears. Their entire relationship existed inside the machinery of television production. Carson did not build personal connections with anyone. He built professional hierarchies. He respected talent. He rewarded loyalty. But he never let anyone close enough to see the machinery behind his smile. This is why the betrayal hit differently than people understand. It was not about losing a friend. It was about breaking a chain of command he thought was unbreakable. 1986 arrived with cracks already forming in the foundation. NBC offered Carson a new contract, 2 years guaranteed. They offered Joan 1 year. The message was clear. She was valuable but replaceable. Then someone leaked an internal memo from network executives. The memo listed potential successors for when Carson finally retired. Her name was missing completely. She was the permanent guest host, but not the permanent future. She understood immediately what this meant. The industry would never let a woman ascend to that throne. No matter how many times she sat in that chair, no matter how many ratings she delivered, the glass ceiling was not invisible. It was written in company memos. The timing was perfect for disaster. Fox Network came calling with an offer that seemed impossible. They wanted her to host a competing late-night show, her own kingdom, her name above the title. This is where the decision became fatal. Her husband Edgar managed her career and made the calculation. They would keep the Fox deal secret until the last possible moment. Joan agreed, but the guilt ate at her constantly. She knew Carson valued loyalty above everything else. She knew this would feel like war to him, but survival instinct overpowered sentiment. She was 53 years old. This might be her only chance to escape being the permanent second choice. Then the news leaked before she could control the narrative. A trade publication broke the story. 2 versions of what happened next exist, and both people took their version to the grave. Joan claimed she called Carson immediately to explain her reasoning. She said he refused to take the call. His secretary blocked her repeatedly. Carson claimed she never called. He said she ambushed him through the media like a coward. The truth died with both of them. What survived was his emotional reality. He felt betrayed by the one person he elevated above all other comedians. Carson did not yell. He did not argue. He simply erased her from existence. Permanent ban from The Tonight Show. No exceptions. No path back ever. But the retaliation went deeper than anyone expected. He used his industry power to choke her guest access everywhere that mattered. If you booked Joan Rivers, you risked losing Johnny Carson as a guest. Most people chose Carson without hesitation. NBC executives reportedly told producers that supporting her meant choosing sides in a war they could not win. The network that once paid her was now working to destroy her. Her Fox show launched in October of 1986. The ratings started strong, then collapsed within months. Fox had promised her creative control, but delivered constant interference. They demanded changes to her format. They wanted different writers. They hated her choice of guests. She refused to surrender what little power she had. The battles became daily. By May of 1987, both she and Edgar were fired. The show lasted 7 months. 7 months to destroy 2 decades of goodwill. Then, tragedy became a complete catastrophe. 3 months after the firing, Edgar unalived himself in a hotel room. The financial damage was total and irreversible. Their production company collapsed overnight. She owed millions to investors and partners. The industry that once celebrated her now whispered about her failure at parties and award shows. Some people blamed her ambition. Some blamed her disloyalty. Most just avoided her completely. And through all of it, Carson said nothing publicly. His silence was not neutral. His silence was a weapon more effective than any statement. People started choosing sides in the entertainment world. Was he the betrayed king protecting his legacy, or the vindictive emperor destroying a career? Was she the ambitious survivor trying to break free, or the disloyal apprentice who bit the hand? The answer depends entirely on which story you believe about the phone call that may or may not have happened. The years after the Fox disaster were brutal for Joan. She had to rebuild from absolute zero. She took any job offered. She did game shows. She sold jewelry on shopping networks at 3 in the morning. She performed in casinos in towns nobody visits. Comedy clubs that once fought to book her now treated her like a has-been. The industry humiliation was constant and public. Every rejection reminded her of what she lost. Every small venue reminded her of the arena she used to command. Her friends from the Carson years stopped calling, not because they hated her, but because associating with her felt dangerous.
It's very hard for me to believe sometimes on the time frame to think that it was 21 years ago when you first came out and sat down.
Do you think you're any older?
I don't feel any older. I feel great.
Yeah, you know when I feel older? I went to buy sexy underwear, and they automatically gift wrapped it.
Oh.
And they go,
Obviously for your aunt or something, sure.
And when you buy a bikini,
Dad?
or when the body is falling, and you're wearing a bikini, you go wading, and the top gets wet first, you go,
Carson, meanwhile, remained untouchable. He retired in 1992 with a finale that drew 50 million viewers. He spent his retirement exactly how he spent his career: in silence, in privacy, behind walls nobody could scale. He played tennis. He watched old movies. He avoided the industry that made him. He never addressed the Joan situation publicly. He never explained his decision. He never showed regret. People close to him said he felt justified completely. She broke the code. She paid the price. That was the end of the story for him. But for Joan, the story never ended. It followed her through every interview, every profile, every retrospective about her career. Reporters always asked about Carson. She gave different answers depending on her mood. Sometimes she said he was cruel. Sometimes she said she understood his anger. Sometimes she said time should have healed it. But time ran out before healing arrived. She rebuilt her career through sheer force of will. She became huge again in the 2000s. She had a new talk show. She won awards. She became a cultural icon again. But the shadow of Carson never left. People still defined her partially through that relationship and its ending.
And he never spoke to me again. Ever. I would, now, dissolve. I was fired from Fox. My husband died. I was out of work. I was broke. I couldn't get myself arrested. I would see him in a restaurant. He still wouldn't talk to me.
There were rumors over the years about potential reconciliation. Someone would claim they spoke briefly at an industry event. Someone else would say he sent a message through a mutual friend. None of it was verified. None of it mattered. The distance remained absolute until his death. When he died, she was doing a show in Las Vegas. Someone told her backstage between sets. She finished the performance before processing the news. That night, she gave an interview where she said losing him felt like losing a father who disowned you. You mourned the relationship that could have been more than the person who actually existed. January 23, 2005. Carson dies and the feud resurrects itself louder than any tribute. Reporters ask Joan for comments everywhere she goes. Her response mixes bitterness with professional respect carefully. She says he was a great broadcaster who changed television forever. She does not say he was a great man. She does not say she forgives him. She imagines a different ending sometimes. An ending where he forgives her before time runs out. An ending where they laugh about the war over lunch. An ending where he admits the punishment exceeded the crime. But that ending never came. She visits the idea of his resting place years later. Not the real location, because nobody knows where his ashes were scattered. She becomes the only person who remembers their fracture the way it actually felt. History simplifies it into tabloid drama. She lived it as the collapse of everything she built. Memory becomes the uninvited guest at the funeral that never happened. The psychological truth is darker than the public story. Carson was not a villain. He was a man who needed absolute control in every situation. His childhood was unstable in ways that shaped everything he became. His mother was cold and critical and withheld affection like a weapon. Young Johnny learned that performing could earn brief moments of approval, but vulnerability only invited cruelty. He learned early that vulnerability meant pain, so he built a fortress personality brick by brick across decades. He only felt safe when he controlled the room completely. The stage was his kingdom because every variable was managed, every joke was tested, every camera angle was planned, every guest was vetted. Nothing surprised him because surprise meant loss of control. Joan threatening that control by leaving activated something primal in him. It bypassed logic and went straight to the wounded child who learned that people always leave. It was not about business, it was about trust, and trust for Carson was something he gave once and never again after betrayal. He had been divorced 3 times before Joan left. He saw patterns everywhere. Everyone eventually chose themselves over him. Joan was supposed to be different because he chose her. He made her. In his mind, that created a debt that could never be repaid. Joan understood this later. She said in interviews that she realized he could not forgive because forgiveness required emotional flexibility he did not possess. He was built for performance, not reconciliation. His entire emotional architecture was designed to avoid pain, not process it. But understanding did not equal acceptance. She spent the rest of her life angry that one decision defined their entire history. 100 shows together, years of professional respect, countless late nights where they made television history, all erased because she chose herself over his comfort. That ratio felt unfair. That math felt cruel. She did not regret taking the Fox offer. She regretted that taking it meant losing everything else. She regretted that he made her choose between having a career and having his approval. She regretted that 20 years of loyalty bought her nothing when she finally needed to be disloyal. The cruelest part was how completely he could erase someone. Other hosts had feuds. Other relationships ended badly in Hollywood. But Carson had the power to make you disappear from the industry you built your life in. He never had to say a word. His silence communicated everything. Bookers knew, producers knew, network executives knew. Cross Carson and you become invisible. Joan learned this in real time, watching doors close before she even approached them, watching friends stop returning calls, watching her career dissolve like it was never real to begin with. She also learned something about fame that Carson always knew. You are only as real as people remember you. And if the most powerful person in your industry decides to forget you, then everyone else follows. She had to rebuild her reality from scratch. She had to convince America she still existed. It took years. It required humiliation. It demanded she become someone new because the old version was erased. And rebuilding is slower than destruction. Every door that once opened with a phone call now required begging. Every producer who once admired her suddenly claimed they were fully booked. She walked into rooms where people who used to greet her with smiles now looked past her like she was a stranger. That invisibility hurt more than the anger ever did. It was a reminder that fame is a crowd-built illusion. When the crowd looks away, the person inside the spotlight disappears. She pushed through anyway. She wrote, she performed, she showed up in places that felt beneath her, all because she refused to vanish completely. Reinvention became her survival instinct. Every interview, every joke, every step forward was a small act of defiance against the silence Carson left behind. Carson never spoke about her publicly after the ban. He never explained his logic. He never defended his choice, because to him it needed no defense. She broke the code. The punishment was obvious. This is how his mind worked. Actions had consequences. Loyalty had value. Betrayal had a price. The price was permanent exile. He never questioned if the price was too high because he never questioned his own judgment about anything. Joan questioned everything. She replayed the decision for decades. Should she have told him sooner? Should she have turned down Fox? Should she have burned her career to preserve his feelings? The answer was always no, but the guilt remained. Guilt is not logical. It exists even when you make the right choice. Carson chose silence as his funeral. No crowds, no speeches, no closure for anyone who knew him. But her memory and her pain screamed louder than any eulogy could. The guest at the funeral that never existed was not a person standing in a room. It was betrayal. It was the professional love that curdled into professional destruction. It was the one story he refused to finish or resolve. He controlled everything in his career, except the narrative of how it ended. Joan Rivers became that narrative. She became the question mark that outlived the answer, the mentor and the protege, the king and the exile, the man who built walls and the woman who crashed through one. That relationship defined his final years more than retirement or awards or legend. It defined him as someone who could not forgive. And in the end, that is the only guest that mattered. The ghost of what loyalty costs when it breaks. Joan had been his chosen one. She was the guest host who kept his chair warm when he needed a break. She sat in his spot, used his monologue mark, heard that same roar from the crowd, and believed it meant he trusted her.